Right, well, that's what we reported, but let me just press you on the question of being a Liberal Democrat. If you're a Democrat, why not let democracy judge whether he should be the MP for the constituency he competes for?
Well, I think, John, that the behaviour of a parliamentary candidate is very, very important. You cannot go around depicting or tweeting or promoting cartoons that are offensive to a number of voters. This is not just about Maajid Nawaz's own constituency. This is about Liberal Democrat target seats. It's about Liberal Democrat MPs in Birmingham, in Manchester, in Bradford West, in Solihull, in Bristol West as well. There are a number of seats where there's a huge number of Muslims and they've been offended, and not just
right. Well, hold on there, because the Liberal Democrats have just been in touch with us.
John,
you'll need to know this.
I've come on, and I really want to make this point. Let me just.
You make one point, and then I'm going to tell you something you need to know before tomorrow.
Okay. Let me just make this point, and I promise I'm very happy to respond to any questions you have on this. The point is, it's not just about the tweeting that Maajid Nawaz has been involved in. It's the foul language that he's used for people who've challenged him. It's the fact he's brought the Liberal Democrats into disrepute. This is not about freedom of speech. This is about the behaviour of a parliamentary candidate, and that's our concern, and that's why 60 Muslim organisations and individuals wrote to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg. That's why a number of us will be meeting the leadership tomorrow. We're not talking about freedom of speech here. Nobody's talking about curtailing anybody's freedom of speech.
Okay, well,
but we're saying the behaviour of a parliamentary candidate is very important.
You've made that point. Now, the Liberal Democrats have now told us that this meeting tomorrow is a long-range one that was planned long ago, and they do not propose to discuss this matter with you tomorrow. But before we go on, therefore, to a question about that, I want to ask you this. What about the threats against Mr. Maajid, that he has defamed the Prophet? You know where that leads in Pakistan? Death.
Well, I've been very clear throughout this whole episode to have condemned any violence towards Maajid Nawaz. I'm somebody who's been subjected to death threats from Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda in the last few months. I know what it's like to live under a death threat, and I would never wish that on anybody, no matter how opposed I am to their views. I was very clear in that we condemn any violence. You know, in the last 12 days, I've had racist abuse. I've had anti-Muslim hatred directed towards me. I've had death threats towards me. But, you know, in the end, we've got to be responsible enough to say that we have a political party whose parliamentary candidate has upset a number of Muslims in this country.
Okay, fine. But you have a political party of which you are a member. It's called the Liberal Democrat Party. And most secular viewers looking in will say, this sounds neither liberal nor democratic. What on earth are you doing in this party if you find it so offensive?
Muslims in this country who have found Maajid Nawaz's behaviour offensive have a right to use their democratic right to make their views known to the Liberal Democrats. They have a right to speak
on behalf of all these Muslims? Who elected you?
Who elected Maajid Nawaz, for that matter? This is...
No, who elected you? That was the question I asked you. Don't ask another question in return. Who did elect you to represent 20,000 Muslim complainants?
Well, I think if you ask those 20,000 Muslims, they say I'm speaking on their behalf. And all the feedback I've had from many people in the Muslim community suggests they support my viewpoint. I'm articulating something which is very, very important for us Muslims. We find the depictions of our Prophet offensive and forbidden in Islam. And, you know, this issue can be resolved in a responsible way by Maajid Nawaz recognising his mistakes, to apologise.
Well, what about Mr. Nawaz's point?
Investigating...
What about Mr. Nawaz's point?
Investigating these complaints in a way that brings closer to this issue.
What about Mr. Nawaz's point that his God is a lot greater than some being that would be remotely offended by anything like this? He's got much bigger things to contend with than that.
Maajid Nawaz has got the right to say that. I've got the right to challenge him about what he's done, as have Muslims. I've got the right to do that. You know, this is not just about...
Then as we live in a democracy, why not let the ballot box decide it? Why not let the ballot box decide it? That's where we began, and you've not answered that satisfactorily.
This, John, is not about freedom of speech. This is about the behaviour of a parliamentary candidate that uses foul language when he is challenged about the tweeting of that cartoon. I don't believe that that's behaviour befitting a parliamentary candidate standing for any political party, and that's the stance we've had from the beginning, and that's the stance we'll take through to our meetings with the Liberal Democrats tomorrow, and the campaign goes on as we move forward.
And if you don't get satisfaction, will you leave the Liberal Democrats?
Well, I'm not going to, prejudge what discussions we have tomorrow. In the end, it's about being responsible and articulating the 20,000 Muslims who are concerned by this, they're offended by this, and you know, we want to make our representations through the democratic process in a peaceful way.
And let's just clarify a brief final question. Do you condemn utterly any attempted violence against Mr. Nawaz?
I don't see the logic of you asking that question again. I've just answered that question. Without any reservation, I condemn any violence directed towards Maajid Nawaz or anybody else. And I hope those people who are asking me to condemn the violence against Maajid Nawaz condemn the violence against me that I've received over the past few days as well.
And finally, what do you want to say to Nick Clegg tomorrow if he's prepared to listen to you on this thing?
Well, whoever we speak to tomorrow, I will be saying that Muslims are offended by that cartoon, and we hope that moving forward, that the Liberal Democrats recognise that the voice of Muslims can't be ignored.
Mohammed Shafiq, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Manchester.